strategy to organize the US working class, that's obviously, I'm not in the best position because, you know, you're on the ground there, you're working with people, but obviously base building is very important. And you look at the example of um, the most powerful movements that, you know, even with small memberships that were able to have a national impact, like the Black Panther Party. I mean, that's what it was all about. It was about also highlighting the contradictions of the system. So in relation to climate change, so, you know, for example, the 10-point program of the Panthers was actually a reformist program, but it's the fact that if that sector of the population demands you know, decent housing and jobs and so on, the system says we can't provide it. And actually, they looked at Cuba as an example to show, well, if this small Caribbean island can provide, you know, food, housing, education, healthcare for the entire population, then how can the US state tell us that it can't afford to do that? So that's really important. I mean, you have a president who denies that climate change is a thing, right? But, you know, the experience of tens of millions, I don't know, maybe, you know, hundreds of millions of people in the United States is that it is not just a thing, it's destroying their lives, right? Even the wealthy in Los Angeles, right, or California, somewhere they're having their homes burnt down. So I think, you know, part of the reason we made the documentary is it is a way to reach out to people. We have to make our uh, the ideas that we want to get across, we have to make them accessible. We have to, I think Belly of the Beast work is so important because it's very appealing to, you know, people who young people, to people who maybe haven't even entered politics before, who aren't used to meetings, left-wing meetings and stuff. So yeah, it's just, you know, people will believe, they will change their views when they see evidence, right? The experience of different, you know, it's like the story about, you know, think about the Cuban Revolution. It emerges out of the 1950s, right? McCarthyism, and Cubans are completely infected or affected with anti-communism of the McCarthy era. And all the Cubans that I spoke to had worked very closely with Che Guevara and Fidel when I did my PhD research. They were like, well, I thought I was anti-communist, you know, that's what I grew up thinking. Those were my views. They were delivered to me. But when Fidel stood in front of us and he said, do you agree with the introduction of free education? Yes, we do. Do you agree with the healthcare? Yes, we do. And the housing programs and all the rest of it? Yes, we do. And he says, that's socialism. And then people are like, well, I guess I'm a socialist then, you know, because I'm certainly a Fidelista. So I think, you know, people, we have to show for example, and Cuba is so important for us precisely for that reason. And that's why whatever we're campaigning on, whether it's the local climate change issue, we need to make sure we're defending Cuba and we're helping Cuba survive through this absolutely suffocating economic crisis, because Cuba helps us to provide that alternative example.